Now to important business in Thornton Township, which hit a roadblock tonight, not because of the weather, not because of logistics, but because two trustees refused to show up.
Their absence prevented Supervisor Tiffany Henyard from filing a vacancy on the board. So what is going on?
Let me explain everything to you, Tiffany. Here we have another long tirade from Tiffany Henyard on Facebook. The highlight of the show is the lawyer cam, which people can't stop watching because the lawyer sits there completely unconcerned as if he's on autopilot. Whether you support Trump or not, if you've been following the ongoing drama in Thornton Township, you already know the kind of drama we're talking about. Henyard often speaks fervently about harmony and collaboration, but let's be honest, it seems like meaningless platitudes, since Henyard, who also has the key to the impasse, is quick to blame the trustees for their tardiness and equally quick to intimidate anyone who disagrees with her now that she is pushing for unity. Gonzalez and Carl argue that the township is at a standstill. This contradiction is hard to ignore, so let's investigate it by looking at the township meeting, or more specifically, the meeting that never. Even though Tiffany Henyard was aware that two trustees would not be present on a given day at advance, she nevertheless showed up in keeping with her catchphrase, show up and show out, rather than focusing on seeking answers. Henyard used the occasion to attack the missing trustees, accusing them of being to blame for issues like unpaid invoices and community service delays. Henyard has obligingly maintained the emphasis on herself, disregarding the reality that she is equally a part of the dysfunction, just like everyone else. Because of the numerous lawsuits involving former Thornton Township employees that are still being investigated in light of these ongoing issues, she naturally returned to her usual refrain of bragging about the township's alleged progress under her leadership, budget surpluses, and the underlying message that she is the best thing that has ever happened to the township. In reality, however, the township is still stuck in a state of gridlock and unable to move forward due to a lack of cooperation. This is especially evident that the situation doesn't seem justified or logical. Since moving into that house, Tiffany Henyard has boasted about her wealth and positioned herself as the borough's savior. Here's the catch: $4.2 million here, $2.6 million there, and even a $2.2 million property tax rebate that is allegedly awaiting homeowner reimbursement. Many of these claims are unsupported by evidence, concrete figures, or thorough research. Tiffany Henyard isn't wasting any time in the spotlight, especially with her endorsement of the Trustworthy app. There is no explicit explanation of where this money is or how it is being managed, which is a breakdown for someone who supports transparency and accountability. Henyard seems more interested in placing blame than in offering information. She says the trustees are preventing progress, but where is her duty to present precise documented plans? She says, look at my circuses, but where are the invoices and documentation proving she is collaborating with these trustees? Instead of offering anything, she critiques the gaps and highlights them, highlighting the resignation of trustee Jerry Jones and the need for the board to designate a replacement. Her insistence on filling a seat quickly and without transparency seems less about real progress and more about securing a loyal ally and a guaranteed vote on the board. Henyard stresses that this action is necessary to end the current deadlock and ensure the township runs smoothly.
Township, another challenge to Supervisor Tiffany Henyard.
And WGN's Jenna Barnes has details on a boycott by trustees to halt Henyard.
Carl's refusal to name a new person has led to criticism of her conduct as hypocritical. The twist is that, according to the joint statement released yesterday by Trust Gonzalez and Carl Henyard, Gonzalez seems to acknowledge the flaws in this process and is working to move away from it, realizing that continuing in the same direction would only lead to more mistakes. Meanwhile, Tiffany appears determined to maintain the same process that she once profited from, even though she is now criticizing it. This raises a crucial question. Is appointing another trustee who is loyal to Henyard the right course of action? Although it would momentarily ease the traffic, it runs the risk of widening the rift by strengthening her hold, which the township might require in place of a new beginning. The township's issue seems to be more about restoring integrity and cooperation than it is about government. This live stream felt less like a leader engaging with her community and more like someone attempting to control the narrative she repeated. An unbiased leader who can reconcile the ACC's accusations of fake news with Henyard's threats to sue anyone who disparages her, possibly including me, and restore confidence in its leadership. The same terms like surpluses, progress, and unity. But she didn't offer any hard proof that the figures were correct. In addition, it seems like she's preparing to start her own YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to if you're interested, though not everyone in the chat last night seemed eager to do so. For those who want to follow the mayor, it will be fascinating to see how long the channel is active, but be cautious about what you're getting into in her personal life. Names like Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and Rosa Parks were boldly compared.
How Dalton's monthly meetings should be run from here on out. Mayor Tiffany Henyard sued village trustees earlier this month, accusing them of illegally holding a meeting.
If you're going to claim to be a modern-day civil rights leader, perhaps start by ensuring that the community isn't collapsing under your leadership. When things went wrong, the blame game began at the meeting where she blamed the trustees for their absence, accused them of spreading false information, and reprimanded anonymous critics for harming her reputation. However, even though confidence is good, it often comes across as overly optimistic, especially given that the township is still stagnating and there isn't any apparent progress in sight. I'm just stepping up. It's difficult to lead by example and back up bold claims with unquestionable evidence, but it's also important to keep in mind that, despite her frequent claims of collaboration and unity, her actions speak for themselves. If Henyard has really improved the township's financial status, why are the trustees and the public unaware of the source of these surpluses? By describing criticism as deliberate sabotage, she frequently bulldozes anyone who disagrees with her, accusing people of abandoning her and making her the victim of political manipulations. Now, let's review the trustee vacancy. Without a full board, decisions are delayed, bills are not paid, and resident services are at risk. However, Henyard's tactics of accusing trustee Coral of lying and advancing her personal agenda simply cast doubt on her sincerity. She is the victim in a narrative where she is the martyr and her detractors are the traitors. The issue is that leadership unites people, even those who disagree. Of a modification as things are, the community needs leaders who can put aside their pride, focus on the crucial concerns, and cooperate for the greater good. If Henyard truly wants to demonstrate that she is the leader she claims to be, she will need to back up her statements with actions and results, and everyone will need to be open to cooperating with the current trustees. I don't think she can do that. The primary issue with Tiffany Henyard is her leadership style, which mixes "look at me, don't question me." It makes it seem like she and the trustees are fighting over the tenants' unpaid bills. Let's take action and hold each other accountable in ways that put the welfare of locals above merely political aspirations, with ship services in limbo and crucial initiatives like the property tax rebate that Henyard continuously advocates coming to a standstill. Her inability to collaborate with the trustees and her refusal to provide crucial open information are only making things worse. There is a greater need for reform. Her constant self-promotion, which includes comparing herself to civil rights leaders and giving lavish speeches, frequently comes across as campaigning rather than actual governance. Henyard and Transparency suggested that a special board meeting might be called to address the persistent problems. Thoron Township requires trustees who are capable of independent thought rather than merely approving choices because the town is at a turning point and it is uncertain what will happen next. Although it may seem impossible to find such a trustee at this time, it is essential to have someone who can act independently and offer new ideas. The people should lead any local or national government, and elected officials should serve, not dominate or win arguments. Views in order to foster the unity she regularly promotes. Hand must demonstrate a commitment to collaboration and work with the trustees. The narrative focuses on delivering meaningful results for the community. Ultimately, the emphasis should be on whether Thoron Township can move forward and provide the services its residents deserve rather than the power struggle.
Works in South Suburban Dalton at the Village Board meeting tonight. Embattled Mayor Tiffany Henyard spoke out after public comments addressing.
Impromptu videos are helpful because they give us something to think about and respond to before tomorrow. Since I won't be there, at least we know ahead of time that today's meeting is off. Nevertheless, I would like to review the statement they released, and we will analyze it and discuss our thoughts. This communication was sent by Carmen Carline and Christopher Gonzalez. The trustees of Thornton Township announced that they have made the difficult decision to skip tomorrow's planned board meeting. They did not make this decision hastily, stating that they are committed to serving the people of Thornton Township and that they believe is necessary to maintain transparency and responsible governance within the township. Without their involvement, a quorum will not be reached and the meeting cannot proceed as scheduled. Sadly, the current meeting agenda does not meet these requirements, which include items that are more likely to spark unnecessary debate than to offer solutions. Dalton Township deserves a board that values openness, careful planning, and integrity when addressing significant issues. Although there are still important issues that need to be resolved, these trustees are prepared to do so in a meaningful way. For instance, they are working to finalize the selection of a new banking account to ensure financial stability and transparency for Thornton Township. They want to be clear that their goal is to improve Thornton Township by addressing pressing issues in an accountable and transparent manner. Safeguarding township funds, and they think it's critical to talk about the agenda item that calls for the appointment of a new board member. They think that the people of Thornton Township should make this decision instead of a small group of people in a private setting because past experiences, such as the appointment of Tiffany Henyard as supervisor, have demonstrated that decisions made without community input frequently result in conflict and complications. The trustees stated that they are here to make sure that your opinions are heard, your concerns are taken care of, and our township advances. They also want board meetings to be professional, constructive, and solution-focused, with an emphasis on the needs of Thornton Township rather than on pointless disputes that obstruct progress. With honesty, since there isn't a formal meeting scheduled, I expect Henyard to be there, and she will likely go on a long tirade for at least an hour. I encourage everyone to stay with me as she will wait for the others to arrive and then give a long speech full of the same old things we have all heard before. Don't worry, there won't be a meeting today. This is just another example of how a government should not be run. Let's look at this. The supervisor is clearly the first to display dysfunction, and this isn't a coincidence. It's a deliberate statement about the current leadership. However, the residents of Thornton Township deserve a say in this decision because it will directly affect our future. Or lack of it, and Gonzalez and Carl have made it apparent that they will not be attending. So the meeting is essentially over because there is no quorum. Let's move on to the agenda since that is where the frustration is, and I'll explain it to you as we go. The trustees are essentially accusing Tiffany Henyard of trying to smuggle in some controversial decisions that could have serious consequences if your government agenda is like a ticking time bomb. Gonzalez and Carl are calling this agenda unvetted, which is just a tactful way of saying that it's a disaster because it includes things that are meant to cause needless drama. It is concerning that the township supervisor and the trustees are clearly at odds, even though these issues are typically resolved before meetings. The supervisor acts as if planning and foresight are optional, or at the very least, entirely within her jurisdiction. It is challenging to trust leadership when those in charge seem more interested in causing conflict and resolving actual issues. And that's before we even talked about the bank account issue. Who's authorizing these items? Is there a formal approval procedure in place? Or is this just a haphazard rush to put items on the list? What is Tiffany Henyard up to? Concerns regarding selecting a new bank account were voiced by Gonzalez and Carl, and since I won't be present, at least we know ahead of time that today's meeting is off. But I would like to review the statement they released, and we will analyze it and discuss our thoughts. Impromptu videos are helpful because they give us something to think about and respond to before tomorrow. To be sure, Financial stability sounded realistic at first, but for some reason, even this simple duty has turned into a disaster under T if any hurts leadership. Even the most basic decisions in Sandon Township devolve into chaos. This communication was sent by Carmen Carline and Christopher Gonzalez. The trustees of Thornton Township indicated that they have made the difficult decision to forego tomorrow's scheduled board meeting. They did not. They said they are committed to serving the people of Dotton Township, who deserve a board that values transparency, thoughtful planning, and integrity when addressing important issues. Without their participation, a quorum will not be reached and the meeting cannot proceed as planned. Unfortunately, the current meeting agenda does not meet these criteria, which include items that are more likely to cause needless disagreement than to provide answers. They made this decision lightly, believing that it is necessary to maintain transparency and responsible governance within the township. These trustees wish to make it clear that their objective is to enhance Thornton Township by dealing with urgent problems there in a responsible and open way. Are significant issues that still require attention, but they are ready to do so in a meaningful way. For instance, they are working to finalize the selection of a new bank account to ensure the financial stability and protection of township funds, and they feel that it is crucial to discuss the agenda item calling for the appointment of a new board member. They feel that the people of Thornton Township should make this decision rather than a small group of people in a closed setting, as past experiences, such as the appointment of Tiffany Henyard as supervisor, have demonstrated that decisions made without community input frequently lead to conflict and complications. The trustees want board meetings to be constructive, professional, and solution-focused, with an emphasis on Thornton's needs. Instead of focusing on unnecessary disputes that hinder progress, they added, "We're here to make sure your opinions are heard, your concerns are taken care of, and our township moves forward with integrity." The residents of Thornton Township deserve a voice in this decision because it will have a direct impact on our future. But right now, we're stuck in a dysfunctional relationship because there is a formal meeting scheduled. I expect Henyard to be there, and she will likely go on a lengthy tirade for at least an hour. I encourage everyone to stay with me, as she will wait for the others to arrive before giving a lengthy speech that is filled with the same old things we've all heard before. Don't worry, there won't be a meeting today. This is just another example of how the government shouldn't be managed. This isn't a coincidence. It's a deliberate statement about the current leadership, or lack thereof, and the supervisor is clearly the first to display dysfunction. Gonzalez and Carl have made it clear that they won't be attending, which effectively ends the meeting because their absence creates a lack of quorum. Let's move on to the agenda because that's where the frustration lies, and I'll walk you through it as we go. Gonzalez and Coral are claiming that this agenda has not been well reviewed, which is simply a nice way of expressing that it is the disaster because it contains items that are intended to create unnecessary drama. In other words, someone, most likely Tiffany Henyard, is attempting to smuggle in some controversial decisions that could have detrimental effects. The supervisor and the trustees are clearly at odds, which is concerning because normally these kinds of issues are resolved before the meeting. But the lack of planning raises serious concerns about who is authorizing these items. Is there a formal approval procedure in place, or is this just a haphazard rush to put items on the list? If your government's agenda is like a ticking time bomb, it's time for a serious rethink. In essence, the trustees are accusing the supervisor of managing the township as though planning and foresight are optional, or at the very least totally within her purview. What is Tiffany Henyard up to? When those in charge seem more interested in stirring up conflict, it's challenging to trust them. And addressing actual problems, and that's before we even talk about the problem with the bank account. When choosing a new bank account, Gonzalez and Carl voiced concerns so they could be certain at first. Financial capabilities sounded realistic, but for some reason, even this straightforward duty has turned into a catastrophe under T's leadership. Even the most basic decisions in Sandon Township turn into a chaotic situation that resembles an episode of a poorly scripted reality TV show where transparency is necessary for managing public funds.